since 2014 for you to not smell the stench that comes from the Sargassum that the people of Seaweed and Marquis have to live with day in, day out? Where have you been to not know that the fishermen of Seaweed and Marquis have to walk through the Sargassum every day to get onto and off their boats with their fish? Where have you been to not know that the Sargassum is damaging the engines of the boats? Where have you been to not know that the Sargassum is creating skin rashes to our fishermen and the people who go on the beach and have to wade through the Sargassum? Where have you been?
Where have you been? Because all that you said there is happening now and worse. Because when you said that, there were no sargassum on the lower eastern corridor and up the western side. But it take over the whole country now. He went on to say that the sargassum is a blessing and not a curse.
So let me start with the Sargassum. It's plaguing the entire East Coast. It's probably already up to St. Patrick. So all of our beaches are affected, the entire coast, particularly places like Marquis, Seaweed, the beach in Malmont. The Sargassum is relentless. But where many people see problems, we see opportunities. And it's sad that Grenada is always the last place to recognize the opportunities. In places like St. Kitts, they're exporting the Sargassum. They sent a container load, I think sometime last year, either to Finland or Sweden, one of these Scandinavian countries, so that they can do research on it. They're exporting the Sargassum. So, we have scientists in Grenada. We have research personnel in Grenada. What we have to look at the Sargassum is an opportunity, it's a resource that the good Lord has provided to us. And it is for us to take that resource and turn it into an asset. I understand that there are in some islands where they're already making things like jewelry and so on from the Sargassum. So we, in the National Democratic Congress, intends to rigorously pursue research as to how we can turn this Sargassum into an actual asset. Whether it's to export it, whether it's to turn it into other things, whether it's to help with composting and fertilizer, we intend to do so, right? Because there are serious opportunities there for us, but we just see it as something that is stinking and something that is rotting. So that is something that we intend to explore, but that is why you see science and research, that is why education is important, right? So those are some of the things we absolutely intend to do.
Now, while you wait on making the jewelry, in the meantime, it's spoiling our jewelry. Then he went on, he had a remedy, how to capture the Sargassum.
The National Democratic Congress intends to tackle the Sargassum problem that has plagued the east coast of Grenada for the last several years. It affects the town of Grenville, it affects most of the east coast. Starting from as low down as Malmont, Lassa Jessens, St. David, all the way up. It has become a living nightmare, frankly, for many of our coastal residents. It affects the beaches. It no doubt you have to live with the stench. The residents in Seaweed, Marquis, and I think all the way into Grenville, you get that stench. Now, if you view life negatively, you will simply perhaps see the Sargassum as a problem. But if you view life positively, we know that everything that has been placed on planet Earth is placed there by the Creator. And He gives us the wisdom to find creative ways to use whatever it is that is on planet Earth. So we see the Sargassum as an opportunity for us, in fact, to be able to use it to the benefit of Grenada. And so we intend, first of all, to capture the Sargassum before it gets to shore. We intend to research, bring into Grenada nets that we can run along the coastline so that we can capture the Sargassum before it gets to shore. we can then bring it ashore, we can then store it appropriately, conduct the necessary research on it, and use the findings from the research to create products that would be useful for us. And let me make it clear, there are already other islands within the OECS that has been exporting the sargassum to European countries. So we have an asset which is simply lying along our coastline, and we have not been utilizing it. We are satisfied that we have enough scientists, that we have enough researchers within Grenada, the OECS, and the wider Caribbean who will be able to help us address this problem. And so we do not intend to allow our citizens in Subies, Marquis, Grenville, and the coastal areas of St. David and St. George's to simply have to continue to live with the stench of the sargassum when it gets to shore and when the sun starts shining on it, which to a large extent is what creates the scent by the gases being released from the sargassum. So we intend to address this matter and address it in a way that will in fact create economic activities for St. Andrew and St. David. So we want to assure you that we will not simply allow this problem to go unchecked. And I think even some of our farmers in the past have to some extent begun using the sargassum as fertilizer. But in fact, there is very little support being provided by the Ministry of Agriculture or any other research department or group within the government. And so that is something we intend to tackle.
Now, I ain't going to get into this set of rubbish. All rubbish. Right? I just want to know how you know what the findings would be when he do that we're going to use it. How we know what the findings is going to be? That's what I want. That's all I want to know. Y'all gonna figure out the rest of that. But also in the campaign, the David Andrew was the candidate for St. Andrew Southeast, spoke of the sargassum and that they were already engaging Martinique. They ain't in office yet. Just remember that. That's the lies and the deception that came from these people and had supporters there, gagagoo. Yay! You ain't in office. You know nothing about government. You know nothing about politics. None of you. But you already engage Martinique.
It's an attempt to regulate that problem. Listen, in the 80s, they brought some heavy machinery on the beachfront. And any ABC environmentalist would have told you that that was not sound. So they started to take out all of the sand, and then the water started to come right up to the road. And then because that didn't work, nothing else was done. But hear me, an NDC administration will address that. In fact, we have already contacted a foreign company based out of Martinique that specializes in capturing the seaweed, the sargassum, collecting. Well, they could do it if they want. The people will benefit even if they get it done before elections. Yeah? So, capturing it and washing, but not only that, we're going to bring it ashore and we are going to do research on it and make products with it. In other territories in the region, it's being done. Why can't we do it too? Let's take this apparent curse and see the opportunity in it with an NDC government that will be done.
Yes! Capture it, bring it ashore, and make products with it. I don't talk. All of that was said in 2022. All of that in 2022. Since then, we've been plagued even worse with the sargassum. Each year, it's getting worse than the year before. This year, 2025, was the worst ever. And then we were told by the Minister of Climate Resilience that all is well, because from the 1st of March, they put things in place to capture and to collect sargassum.
Grenada continues to lead regional efforts and international efforts as well in addressing the environmental and economic challenges posed by sargassum influxes. So in response to the influx, ladies and gentlemen, we've been experiencing that over, and it's a seasonal thing. So over the Easter holidays, you might have seen videos, you might have seen images as well, showing that, the influx started on the eastern side, and now it is in a large volume on the southern zone. As an immediate relief, ladies and gentlemen, we have implemented our 2025 operational response plan. This is the local plan now, where we have hired 32 temporary workers, and we have deployed the Coast Guard's assets to manage the seaweed collection effectively in the Maki and Sobeys area as of March 1st, 2025. Priority has been given so far on that side to residential areas. The materials collected are taken to Telescope. In collaboration with the GTA, we are responding to the influx of sargassum on the West Coast. And so we have the Yahama boats at the Coast Guard base, and we are mobilizing, and we intend to launch and deploy the floating fence that we have and to collect the sargassum in water using trawl nets. The materials will be landed at the Grand Mall jetty, and it will be taken to Perseverance landfill. Priority is given to the commercial areas as well. The trawl nets will be used to collect sargassum in water on the West Coast from tomorrow. And we are going to be landing at the Guave jetty, and it will be taken to Perseverance. The boats will be returned to the Coast Guard base at the end of each working day as a matter of security. We just can't predict where you're going to go, but we are trying our utmost to deal with it. So minus the noise and just focus on there is interim steps that we are taking, and these are the few steps that we are taking thus far.
Anybody see any sargassum land on any jetty in Grenada? Be it Grand Mall, Guave, Telescope. Anybody see that? Then yesterday, Wednesday, May the 7th, 2025, in a press conference hosted by the Minister of Agriculture and the Ministry of the Blue Economy, or should I say the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of the Blue Economy, we've heard from the ambassador of the ocean with a different story.
In the Blue Economy Ministry is to look at a strategic management of the sargassum. And it is not just a matter of picking up the sargassum when it gets to the shore and disposing of it. What we have decided to do was to work with our international partners and our regional partners, namely the OECS and the European Union. Last year, we would have convened a sargassum conference, and out of that, we would have called for expressions of interest for companies and individuals locally, regionally, and internationally to come up with ideas and innovative processes for dealing with sargassum, not just collecting it and disposing of it, but developing products, biotechnology, energy. So what we would have done over the past couple of months, working in close collaboration with the European Union, is put out that call for expressions of interest, and we would have received approximately 33 expressions of interest for persons and companies from around the Caribbean, Grenada, as far as the European Union, giving us ideas and proposals for monitoring, predicting, and value chain development of the sargassum. So it is not just a matter of some of these things would take a while because it is a long-term strategic development. It is not an ad hoc response that we are trying to do. We are trying to do a comprehensive management strategy for the sargassum. So we had companies that showed us that they can monitor the sargassum using satellite imagery, using drones. Then you have companies that offered to do collection onshore, companies that offered to put up nets and so on. But it is not a one solution for the sargassum. There are certain areas that nets might work. There are certain areas the nets would not work. So it is important that we look at this as a holistic. It's more of a reoccurring natural disaster because the sargassum influx sometimes overwhelms the best prepared country. And by far, Grenada is one of the more leading countries as it relates to trying to deal with the sargassum at a strategic level.
There was a whole conference hosted by Grenada that we paid for. It was budgeted for on sargassum. And to date, we nowhere better than we was 5 years ago with the sargassum. Nowhere better. But you asking, where are you been? Where are you been? Where you been? In the meantime, we have to deal with the stench and everything else that comes with it, which is a whole lot and affecting people differently. Even my little Daisy, even my little puppy, vomiting. And I mean, it is crazy. And talk. That's all. Talk.